everyone. In this lecture, we'll be discussing about blood pressure and factors affecting blood pressure. So, what is blood pressure? Blood pressure is the lateral pressure exerted by the column of blood on the walls of arteries. So, aorta, arteries, there's a pulsatile blood flow. Aorta are also known as elastance vessels. Arterioles are known as resistant vessels. Capillaries are known as extensed vessels, and especially veins and vena cava, these are known as capacitance vessels. So pressure is exerted on the lateral wall of larger arteries, and this measures the blood pressure. While at the level of arterioles, there is the maximum drop in blood pressures, since arterioles are the one that regulates the blood flow to the tissue as they are supplied by the smooth muscles. So in this diagram, it shows the effect of vasoconstriction on the blood pressure. A constriction increases the blood pressure upstream, which is analogous to the arterial pressure, while it decreases the blood pressure downstream, which is analogous to the pressure measured at the level of capillaries and veins, which is less. The blood pressure is not this steady. It fluctuates during the cardiac cycle. Now, different types of blood pressure are systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, pulse pressure, and mean arterial blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure is the maximum lateral pressure exerted during systole of the heart, and it is approximately 120 millimeter of mercury, while its range is from 100 to 140 millimeter of mercury. While diastolic blood pressure is the minimum lateral pressure exerted on the vessel wall during diastole of the heart, and it is measured at 80 millimeter of mercury, which ranges from 60 to 90 millimeter of mercury. While pulse pressure is the difference between systolic and diastolic blood pressure, and it is 40 millimeter of mercury. The range is from 20 to 50 millimeter of mercury. Pulse pressure is determined primarily by the stroke volume and arterial compliance. While mean arterial blood pressure, it is the average pressure recorded during the cardiac cycle. Mean blood pressure is not the arithmetic mean or average of systolic and diastolic blood pressure, while it is measured as diastolic blood pressure plus one third of pulse pressure. The range is from 75 to 105 millimeter of mercury. This is because systolic time is much shorter than diastole, so little more emphasis is given for the diastolic blood pressure. Now let's talk about the factors affecting the blood pressure. Blood pressure is primarily affected by the two factors. One is cardiac output and another is total peripheral resistance. While cardiac output is the product of heart rate and stroke volume, so that's why blood pressure is primarily determined or affected by the heart rate, stroke volume, and total peripheral resistance. In general, whenever there is an increase in cardiac output, it increases the systolic blood pressure, and increase in total peripheral resistance increases the diastolic blood pressure. The resistance to the blood flow depends on mainly the radius of the blood vessels and viscosity of the blood. For example, radius. During vasoconstriction, there is a decrease in radius, and that increases the blood pressure, while vasodilatation actually decreases the blood pressure. Another factor for the resistance is viscosity of the blood, which is determined by the total number of blood cells and then composition of the plasma. Like whenever there is an increase in the total number of red blood cells, for example, it increases the viscosity of the blood and thus increases the resistance, and this will increases the diastolic blood pressure. Autonomic nerves on blood pressure. Parasympathetic effect on the heart has negative chronotropic effect, which is decrease in heart rate. This decreases the cardiac output and thus blood pressure is decreased. Since blood pressure is the product of cardiac output and total peripheral resistance, and cardiac output is dependent on heart rate and stroke volume. Sympathetic effect on the heart has the positive chronotropic effect, which increases the heart rate and that increases the cardiac output and then blood pressure, while it also has the positive inotropic effect, which means increase in contractile strength of the heart, that increases the stroke volume and increases the cardiac output and then blood pressure. While in the arterioles, it leads to the sympathetic stimulation leads to the vasoconstriction that decreases the radius of the blood vessels, which then increases the total peripheral resistance and then increases in blood pressure, especially diastolic blood pressure. While sympathetic effect on the veins, it leads to the venoconstriction, which increases the venous return or preload, and then that increases the stroke volume and cardiac output and then finally blood pressure. So this increase in venous return with the increase in end diastolic volume and then increase in stroke volume with the increase in contractile effect of the ventricle, which subsequently increases the cardiac output. This is also known as Frank's Starling law or Starling law of heart, which we have already discussed on the topic of cardiac output and determinants of cardiac output.